sister let me think my boyfriend cheated on me for 5 years.
Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. God blessed me with the best boyfriend. We were high school best friends. We even decided to go to the same college. That's when our relationship went from platonic to romantic. He formally asked me to be his girlfriend, and when I told my family, they were obviously very happy. He told me he wanted to propose once we graduated from college, and right before graduation, sister calls me one day and tells me that I need to go home immediately. Drive an hour and a half back to my parents' house. That's when she told me she saw my boyfriend kissing another girl. She gave me so many details. He was on the verge of tears, and I believed her. I was 2 weeks away from graduation and from getting engaged. I thanked my sister. When I confronted my boyfriend, he completely denied it. When my sister told me she saw him at a coffee shop kissing a girl, told me he'd never even been there. He gave me his phone and his laptop to check, but it was my sister. I believed her and I broke up with him. For a few weeks, he kept begging me to get back with him. He even showed me the engagement ring that he was going to give me after graduation. But every time I asked my sister about it, she was adamant. 5 years later, my sister confesses that it was all a lie. She was jealous of my relationship. Part 2 is up. My sister let me think my boyfriend cheated on me for 5 years. This is not my story time. That's when my sister called me and told me that she had been lying to me for 5 years. That's when she confessed. She was so jealous of my relationship with my boyfriend. She didn't think it was fair for me to be happy. She had gone through an abusive relationship. She even had to get a restraining order. So her experience of love was different to mine. I was in a healthy relationship with my best friend. She also said that she didn't think I would go through the breakup. But it was my sister telling me this. How could I not believe her? She apologized and told me that I should go try to get him back. And that's exactly what I did. The only problem was my ex was now engaged to someone else. And when I reached out to him through text, he called me right away. He told me that he did have feelings for me, but that he didn't think it was fair that 5 years later I was hitting him up. And I agreed. He told me that he was getting married in 2 months. I had to cut my sister off and my parents don't agree with that, but I just cannot even look at her face. Every single time I think about this, I get sick to my stomach and I start to cry. Although my ex and I have stayed in contact and we pretty much text every day. I'm starting to feel like it's not fair for his fiance, but it's also not fair for me. I feel like this is totally wrong. What should I do? Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been together for almost 5 years. Granted, we did break up throughout those 5 years. With all the breakups, we've actually been together for about 3 years. I've never considered myself an obsessive person, but when it comes to him, something just takes over me. Here's some of the reasons why we broke up. At first, he didn't want to be in a relationship even though I begged him, which I know was so dumb of me. So he eventually broke up with me and told me that he didn't want anything serious. But he kept on calling me every single week because he wanted the dirty. Instead, I started going out on other dates and I would flaunt it all over my social media. And this worked. It made him super jealous and he came right back to me. Called me up one day and told me that he wanted me back. The second time we broke up, I caught him talking to some girls on Facebook. When I confronted him, he broke up with me. Told me I was too nosy and that he needed to live his life as a single man. We finally got back together. I told him that it was for marriage. He said yes, that he would eventually ask me to marry him. A few months ago, he started acting really cold towards me. He would barely call me and when we were together, he would never touch me. That's when I started digging in his phone and I found that he was talking to some girls on Instagram. But I knew that if I confronted him, I would risk him breaking up with me again. So I did the next logical thing. I waited until I saw him again and I told him that I was pregnant. I even started to cry to make him feel like I was happy. His face turned completely white and he asked me if I was sure. I said, yes, aren't you happy, baby? Part 2 is up. Am I the asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just so that I could keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. That's when he started to cry. Remember, I don't even have a pregnancy test to show or anything. But surprisingly, he didn't ask for proof of my pregnancy. He just kept crying on the couch. I asked him if he was happy, but clearly he was not. But he lied and said, yeah, of course I'm happy. Seeing how vulnerable he was, I took advantage of the situation and I brought up marriage. I told him we should get engaged soon so that we could tell his family. Then he said, are you sure you want to get married? And I said, of course, we're gonna have a baby. Then he sat there for a minute and thought about it. Finally, he got down on one knee and said, do you want to marry me? I said, yes! And this time I cried for real. All my dreams were coming true. After that, things started moving really fast. We invited both our families to my apartment and we hosted a dinner. We broke the news to them that I was pregnant. Again, nobody asked for proof of the pregnancy though. Our families were so happy and excited. That very same night, he gave me a beautiful engagement ring. His mom even started planning the baby shower. Let me remind you, I'm actually not pregnant. So I had to come up with a plan. You'll never guess what I did. Part 3 is up. Am I an asshole for lying to my boyfriend about being pregnant just to keep him in a relationship? Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I repeat, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. His mom started planning the baby shower and there was no turning back. Even my mom got involved in the planning of the baby shower. So like I said, I'm really not pregnant at this point. So I started trying to get pregnant, but my damn boyfriend just wouldn't touch me. I decided to check his phone again and saw that he was still talking to some girls on Instagram. So I decided to confront him at this point. I mean, we are engaged and I'm supposedly pregnant with his baby. I confronted him and he just got angry at me. He said that if he was going to marry me and have a baby with me, he would need to talk to other girls and that was not a negotiation for him. Then he confessed that he was seeing 2 other girls on the side and that there was no way he was going to stop seeing them and that I couldn't do anything about it. But his confession actually made me fall out of love with him. Now I'm planning to break up with him. But what do I do about the fake pregnancy? I do want to make him pay for what he said to me, but I don't want to hurt our families either. Should I just come clean? What should I do? My father-in-law is forcing my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup today. My husband and I have been married for 2 years. Now, we did get married very, very young. By very young, I mean I was 18 and he was 19. When we started dating in high school, his dad was totally against the relationship. See, my husband was super popular. He played on the football team. All the girls chased him. He also played basketball and was perfect at everything he did. As you can imagine, was extremely strict with him. He was not even allowed to go out on weekends. Me, on the other hand, my parents are pretty much hippies. They let me do whatever I want. We're all very spiritual. My parents have full trust in me. Because of this, I make smart decisions. I actively seek my parents' advice. I even told my parents I lost my virginity when I did. And we had a big conversation about it. It was not dramatic. It was not like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. They just support me in everything I do. Now, my husband's parents are not the same. They tell him not to do a lot of things. They try to control him. So as we were dating in high school, his dad kept telling him to break up with me. He claimed that I was holding him back and that because of me, he spent less time training. Which technically, yes, is true. But at the same time, you cannot stop your son from experiencing human relationships. In fact, he actually broke up with me for 2 weeks. But then we got back together in secret. Everything culminated when he asked me to marry him right after graduation. His parents were absolutely against it. But my parents were all for it. You guessed it, go to part 2. My father-in-law wants my husband to break up with me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. This is a 3-part story time and I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. When he asked me to marry him right out of high school, his parents absolutely freaked. They went to my parents' house and told me off for saying yes. In other words, they were completely blaming me for the whole thing. As if their own son didn't go buy a ring and ask me to marry him. Even did a beautiful proposal, which he had been planning for months. But at this point, his parents didn't even know that we were boyfriend and girlfriend. When they came to my house, his mom, my now mother-in-law, started crying and yelling at me. She told me that I was ruining their family, that I was trying to steal her son, and that all I really cared about was their money. By the way, my parents were middle class, but we were not destitute. His parents are very rich. They own several businesses. But of course, I'm not after their money. That's when they said that if we did end up getting married, I would have to sign a prenup. And I said, yeah, I want to marry him because I'm in love. At this point, his parents knew they couldn't stop us. We were going to get married with or without their approval. But thankfully, his parents came around and let us get married. We had a quaint, small wedding. It was so magical. But his parents wanted him to go to college to play football. In other words, they wanted him to be the next Tom Brady. They made him train for hours, and they didn't even let us live together for the first year we were married. And because they were supporting him, he couldn't say no. They had us on a schedule. Could only see him for about 2 to 3 hours a day. And we were married. 2 years later, he's playing for a football team. But his parents keep thinking that I'm dragging him down. So now they're trying to convince him to leave me. Go to part 3. My father-in-law is trying to convince my husband to divorce me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and this is the final part of the 3-part story time. I'm doing a full face of pink makeup. After a year of us being married, his parents did not allow us to live together because he needed to focus on football. So obviously, I was living with my parents. I was focusing on my own studies, but his parents did allow us to see each other 2 to 3 hours a day. Now, you might think my husband is a total pushover, but let me explain something. His parents paid for all of his training and his entire college tuition. They gave him the best of everything. He got sports massages every single day. They even installed a cold plunge in their backyard. They also had a full gym setup where he and his teammates would go work out every single day. In their house. Obviously, he did not have time for little old me. After a year of this, I couldn't take anymore. I wanted to be with my husband. So I gave him an ultimatum. That he tell his parents that he and I wanted to live together. That's all I wanted. I was even willing to pay for half of the rent. And he told his parents, they said fine. And they bought us a house. Obviously under my husband's name, not mine. Fast forward another year up until now. I've heard his dad tell him on several occasions that he needs to divorce me. That he could find a much prettier wife once he becomes bigger in the NFL. And I walked in on his mom telling him that maybe I can't even have kids. And that he should have me checked. My parents-in-law hate me. I sometimes feel like I am holding him back. They make us miserable. My parents think I should just walk away from the marriage, but I'm too in love. Should I confront my parents-in-law? Help me think of what I should say to them. My husband turned me into a corn star on OF without me even knowing. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I was sending me on Instagram. This is when he finally confessed that he had been recording us doing the dirty. At first, I didn't get it. To be honest, he was my husband, so it was okay. Then he told me that he had been posting the videos on a platform called OF. I had never heard of it before, and then he filled me in. He showed me all of our earnings for the past 12 months. It was almost $150,000. I had never seen that much money in my life. He and I both came from poor families, and that's when he broke down and started to cry. He apologized and told me that he would delete the account, but I had an epiphany. I agreed to continue doing it. Never in my life would I have considered doing something like this, but we had been broke for so long. It was nice that he was paying for everything, that we could afford the better brands at the supermarket. But here's the thing. When I asked him to show me the videos that he had posted of me, I was humiliated and mortified. I thought he had at least covered my face, but no. You could see all of me and him in these videos. And then I made a huge mistake. I read the comments, and it turns out I have a new stalker. Girl, you better believe part 3 is up. Go watch it. Story time about how my husband turned me into a corn star on OF without me even knowing. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Was sending me on Instagram. When he finally showed me the account and I checked the comments, I came to realize I had a stalker. This man knew a lot of stuff about me. He found out where I studied, and he even found out the city we lived in. At this point, I was okay with my husband posting videos of me on OF without me knowing, because the money was so good. We were so broke, we needed it. That's when he promised me that he would block that guy, and that from now on he would blur my face. And I agreed. Which is crazy, I know. So he ended up blocking the stalker and going on with the account. Deal was that I didn't have to do any posting, but I would just participate in the videos like usual. He would do all the editing, but that I would have control of all the money. A year later, I bought my mom a house, and we bought ourselves an apartment, and we started selling stuff on Amazon. And I'm basically the accountant. Control all the money going in and out, and my husband does the rest. And literally nobody knows. We've both kept the secret, and our families just think that we've leveled up. Do you think this is totally wrong, or should we just keep going? Self-care sister out. My best friend stole my fiance and my December wedding plans and then got mad at me when I uninvited her to my birthday party. Disclaimer, is not my story time with sending me on Instagram. Relationship I used to have with my bestie I thought was healthy. We supported each other in everything we did. We paid for each other every chance we could. If we went to a restaurant, she would pick up the bill, and then I would pick up the bill the next time. We would share all of our clothes, and she would literally buy me makeup randomly and just surprise me with it. I would buy her perfume randomly because that's what she loves. This woman would even come to my mom's house. She would cook for my mom and have sleepovers with her. They would watch movies, and I was happy about that. But of course, everything changed when a man came into the picture. When I introduced her to my new guy, she would change her posture. She would change the way she spoke. She was always trying to look pretty around him. She even asked me once, does my makeup look okay for him? I was like, what do you mean? She said, I just need to make a good impression on your man. This got worse until one day, she got tipsy and sat on my boyfriend's lap. Hey, part 2 is already up. Go watch. This is when I catch my boyfriend and my bestie making out in my closet, my apartment that I pay for. I had invited my bestie over to watch a movie and have dinner with me. My fiance shows up without even telling me. I got a really bad vibe. My bestie kept giggling for absolutely no reason. I mean, we were watching Schindler's List. So here's what I did. I needed to put them to the test. Told them I was gonna go get ice cream for dessert and that I would be back. You think my boyfriend offered to go for me? No. They just giggled and said, okay. I leave my apartment and I wait 5 minutes. I come in really quietly. They're not in the living room. I go to my bedroom. They're standing in my closet kissing each other. When I see them, I say, I caught you guys. I knew you were trying to hook up, and I kicked them both out. My fiance stood outside my door for 4 hours begging me to let him in. Instead, I told him I would be keeping the ring, so I break up with both of them. Then I get an invite to their wedding. The same exact wedding she helped me plan. To forget about everything, I planned myself a really nice party. And guess who shows up to my party? My ex-bestie. With my ex. She walks right up to me and asked me why I didn't invite her. And then she threw my cake on the floor. Got a restraining order from both of them. I feel like I should get her fired or something. Should I take revenge? Yes or no? Story time about how my husband moved his mistress into our house. Come on, my story time is on Instagram. Insisted we needed this one nanny. She was 17. She came recommended by one of our employees. I said yes. When this girl came to our house, she looked completely innocent, like a regular 17-year-old girl. Had just graduated high school, seemed really responsible, and really loved the kids. And the kids liked her because she was young and she played with them. After 3 weeks, everything was settled. She was the nanny. We even decided to keep her as a live-in nanny. This made my life so much easier. I was opening my own salon, and my work days were 12 plus hours. This girl was so reliable. She wouldn't just make dinner for the kids, would make dinner for me and my husband. She wouldn't just wash their clothes, she would wash our clothes. And my husband paid her really, really well for this. But this is when I noticed my husband's mood started changing. For the better. He was always in a good mood, and he started working out like crazy. He was eating super healthy, trying to spend more time with the family. That included the nanny. That's when I had that nervous feeling in my stomach, kind that gives you the runs. That's when I knew that something was happening. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my husband moved his mistress into our house. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. My husband was happy all the time after this nanny moved in. That's when I knew something was happening. I started noticing that after I would go to bed, my husband would suddenly get really thirsty and have to go downstairs. Nanny's bedroom was downstairs. Usually I'd go back to sleep. I would wake up a couple of hours later and he was still not in bed. When I went downstairs, he was coming out of the nanny's bedroom. That's when he said that the nanny was feeling sick, that he was just helping her. This kept happening all the time. Till one night, I wake up to find them kissing on the couch, as if the kids and I are not sleeping upstairs. This is when the 17-year-old nanny starts to cry and confesses they met when she was 15 and that they had been together for 2 years. Yes, I just found out my husband was cheating, but I also found out that my husband is a pede. That's when he pipes up and says nanny had been stalking him and that she seduced him. But guess what? I believe her. I took her back to her parents' house and told them what happened. And then his parents got him arrested. I filed for divorce, but now I heard he has a new girlfriend. She just turned 18. Story time about how my grandma got married when she was 14 years old. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. So just picture it. I'm sitting with my 94-year-old grandma in the kitchen, and suddenly she starts talking about my grandpa. My grandpa passed away almost 10 years ago. And to be fair, they did have a wonderful marriage. By all accounts, and by all of my family's accounts, they were totally in love until the moment he took his last breath. Here's how the story goes. The first time they met, she was 12 years old. He had just gotten back from the war. She was walking home from school with her backpack, and my 27-year-old grandpa pulls up in his car. He starts to tell her that she's going to be his future wife, and that he's going to talk to her parents so that they can get married. He kept inviting her into his car, but she kept saying no. He followed her home from school every single day. As my grandma is telling the story, everyone is laughing, except for me. Finally, one day he followed her to her house, knocked on the door, and requested to speak to my great-grandfather. They spoke for an hour, and that's when my great-grandpa promised my grandma to my grandpa, and he gave them permission to get married when she was 14. At first, he wanted them to get to know each other, so they started going on dates. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my grandma married my grandpa when she was 14. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. And if you want longer story times, go to my YouTube. This is when my great-grandfather promised my 12-year-old grandma to my 27-year-old grandfather. My great-grandpa thought that it would be best they wait 2 years so that they can get married when she's 14. In the meantime, he suggested that they start going out on dates. Yes, a 12-year-old girl and a 27-year-old man. By the way, as my grandma is telling this story, all of my cousins are laughing at this. I'm trembling in my seat. She explained to us that for those 2 years, my grandfather was on his best behavior, and that essentially they read books together, they walked together by the lake, and he would take her out to see movies. She said at the time it was a big deal. Going to the movies was like a big treat. I guess it made me feel better knowing that he didn't try to do anything to her at the time. Still, it's absolutely disgusting. Finally, the 2 years passed, and at this point, they're totally in love. They get married. Both their families attended this wedding. How did no one in their families think it was inappropriate? Watching a 14-year-old get married to a 29-year-old man? But it gets worse. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my grandma married my grandpa when she was 14 years old and he was 29. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sent me on Instagram. This is the third and last part, and if you want longer story times, go to my YouTube. 2 years pass and they get married. My grandma even told us that the night of their wedding, my great-grandparents gifted them a night at a hotel so that they could have some privacy. You can imagine what happened. My grandmother described it as the most liberating night of her life. 2 months later, she was pregnant. Their first baby was born right before she turned 15, and then she got pregnant again at 15, and then at 17, and then at 18, 19, and finally 20. My grandfather got into oil in his late 20s. He made about $1 million by the time he was 35, so he was able to give them a very comfortable life. He purchased a manor. They had 3 housekeepers, 1 butler, and 4 nannies, and they had a really happy life. My grandma says my grandpa was always affectionate with her, and she said they blessed their bed every single night. After she finishes telling the story, all of my cousins laugh and think it's cute. I was disturbed. I asked her why it was okay to get married at such a young age. And then I said, would you have wanted me to get married when I was 14? That's when she said that times were just different back then. The war was happening, and people didn't know if they would live or die. She also said that when a catch like my grandfather turned up, most parents were looking for a man like my grandfather to marry off their daughters. Grandpa was educated, handsome, driven, had great work ethic, and he took care of her, which is what he promised my great-grandpa. And then when the children came, he more than took care of them. He even took care of my great-grandparents too. He ended up moving them into the manor in their old age, and they were fully taken care of by the staff. Apparently, the manor was big enough to fit in 4 families. Now, I loved my grandfather. He was a great, kind man, and I myself benefited off the generational wealth. He paid for my education, and I'm now a lawyer for it. But still, a huge part of me feels absolutely disgusted with the history of their love. Even though back then that might have been normal, I think it's horrendous. Yes, they had a great love story, but she was a child. Apparently, this was a big family secret. None of the uncles or my parents wanted us to know. I got into a huge argument with my parents for hiding this from me. They think I'm totally overreacting. Am I though? I guess I'll need more therapy. What do you think?